Are you ready to get casual? Grab your favorite adult beverage or combustible plant and join us for our roundtable TTRPG discussion. Oh yeah, it's time for Casual Friday. And now, here are your hosts.
What's up, everybody? It is time to crack one open. This is actually seltzer. I'm a poser. Uh, and we're getting casual. We're talking about D&D and whether we like it or hate it. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of opinions these days. So let's talk about them.
One
I'm
way or
your
the other, we're
perfectly
going to figure
natural
it out
host.
today.
Right.
Today, we solved this thing. We got a new book. We got two new books and 17 different opinions about them. So I think that's what we're going to sink into the first half or so. We've got a brand new TTRPG by friends of the channels, Taryn, who released Vagabond and then dunked on D&D and said, I'm out. And we're going to talk about that too. He was running for fifth graders, and we've got opinions about getting new people, especially kids, into this hobby and maybe what we're looking for and what kind of tools you can use to do that. Spoiler, I think the starter set, pretty cool. Also, we're talking about clothes and other stuff. But I'm Ryan.
I'm Brad.
I'm Jim.
I'm in the wrong square and I don't know where things are relative to me anymore. Let's talk about Faerun, adventures therein and heroes thereof. We got a twofer. The books are out. First impressions are in. We've been getting dribs and drabs, but it seems like a mixed bag. I see a lot of people being like, "Oh, these are a great setting book with a lot of inspiration." Other people are like, "D&D is terrible," and I'm out. What do you guys think? How you feeling about the newness?
I've I've had a chance to kind of peruse them on D&D Beyond. I don't have my hands on the physical copies yet. I haven't read, cover to cover, just kind of a quick assessment. There's things I like, there's things I don't, which seems par for the Wizards of the Coast, right? Like that's kind of like, I feel like that's what I say about every Wizards of the Coast product. There's things I like, there's things I don't. I've looked more at the DM's book than the player's book. So on that front, I like the layout. I like the gazetteer style of like, here's a brief description of this area and this area and that area. And I like the idea of having a bunch of like one-page dungeons. Really great conceptually, kind of flaccid on the delivery. The adventure seems okay. The like short little adventure that's in there seems okay, but the my biggest disappointment was I wanted to be excited about the one-page dungeons because I love that concept. I think it's one-page dungeons are a very useful tool, especially to new DMs. But they don't really deliver on quality, right? They're just a bunch of encounters. There's not like, good juicy ideas of like, versatile encounters where this could be a combat encounter or it could be a role-play encounter. Let your players decide. Like that's the good game design that you need in a one-page dungeon, so that you get, if you do that with every encounter, you have 4 encounters in a one-page dungeon, for example. You do that in every encounter, but all 4 of them have some sort of versatility to it. Is this exploration or role-play? Is this combat or role-play? Then you really have the potential for 8 different ways, those encounters can go instead of 4, right? And that's what I found lacking in those little one-page dungeons. I haven't done a deep dive on the subclasses yet, so I can't really comment on the player side of things yet.
Yeah,
You know what?
the
It makes me. It reminds me though of I recently played in a one-page dungeon that was exemplary, and maybe it was just the dungeon master, but we had a really good time rocking the Temple of the Moon Priests. Is that the official title of
Yeah.
the dungeon itself? Yeah. So stay tuned after the show. Are we rocking and rolling with that?
Yeah,
We
if you
locked and
want to
loaded?
see us play that one-page dungeon, it's going to be 85 minutes from now. 84 minutes from now, you're going to be able to watch us play that on the Landlocked Warlocks YouTube channel.
Incredible.
I've
This is
got
what I've been on the
reviews.
bottom of the screen.
We've got reviews from Screen Rant and EN World, and they're both pretty positive about the new Forgotten Realms books. But then we also have a review from Ben Milton over at Questing Beast, and his review is much more interesting because he's not like a 5e guy. He doesn't own a lot of 5e books, doesn't read a lot of 5e books, and so he reviews it kind of from the OSR perspective. And he makes a lot of good points as he's going through, saying things like, how come in this dungeon there's only one way to get from this end to that end? Like, how come you can't go multiple pathways through this dungeon? Or how come in this adventure, if you fail a check, there's no way to proceed? It's like he points out a mystery, there's investigation checks, and if you fail any one of them, then the adventure is just, I guess, over, because it doesn't tell you what to do if they can't solve the clue. So I thought that was pretty interesting. From an OSR perspective, he says, like, if I'm going to pay money for this, it has to be better than what I can come up with on the fly.
Yeah, and Mr. Welch reiterates that in the chat. Like, they never take into account what happens if the players fail at a challenge, right? There's not advice to, like, it's not like there's not like a branching path. If they succeed, this happens. If they fail, that happens. Like, that's actually decent adventure design. That's not included, and this rarely included in WotC products. It's just kind of assume that you're going to handhold the players through it until they succeed.
Is Mr. Welch is EN World kind of like IGN is to video games? Like every video game on IGN is at least an 8.0. Is EN World like that? I don't really know.
I mean, when you're getting
EN World seems to get a lot of exclusives, right? Like,
right.
Like Wizards uses EN World to announce a lot of things. So I wonder if even if there's no like overt reason for EN World to give them positive reviews, if you're constantly getting the exclusive, and you have like this rapport with a company, I feel like you're more likely to be positive.
Yeah, I do recommend watching this Questing Beast video. There's a lot of good insight. He has made some very excellent adventures himself, so he knows what he's talking about. He's not just talking hands on the internet. But in there, he says, this feels just like a collection of combats. And I was like, oh yeah, welcome to 5e. That is in general, it's like, here's a room. These guys are in it. Roll initiative. And that's fun for a while in the beginning, especially when you got a shiny new book full of shiny new player abilities. But there's so much more available, and you get the combat for free. So unless it's a very sophisticated, like he goes through a siege in there, and it's just waves of enemies coming at you, and there's no real like tactics or siege equipment that you're using to defend against or whatever. And yeah, a lot of the map is sitting there, looks beautiful, right? Like this is better than any map I'm going to bake by myself, but I could certainly describe a more interesting place, off the top of my head or with a little bit of prep. And it feels like that's the stuff I'm looking for. Like when I get an adventure, I'm content just with a magic marker on a whiteboard. Like I prefer lo-fi stuff anyway, so I don't need the big beautiful map. I need cool ideas that are developed, and a lot of this feels underbaked. It could use another pass or two.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, maybe we should do this on the show. I feel like we could go through these, like take one pass through them and be like, oh, here's where you can add an extra entrance to this dungeon. Here's where you could turn this combat encounter into a role play encounter by adding an NPC here, right? Like, I feel like we could go through and with one simple pass, we could make like 2 tweaks to each of these adventures, and they would be significantly better to run at the table. So I 100% agree with you, Ryan, that like if you just had one more pass at this, you'd have a much better product.
So
do
there's
like-
Dungeon Masters out there. Well, go for it.
I was just gonna say I do like that they name the locations in the maps instead of numbering them, for the most part.
Yeah, that is a nice touch. But yeah, I mean, as far as usability, it's laid out well. You know, the monsters are highlighted in red, or the stat blocks are highlighted in red. You know, it's easy to follow, but again, there's not enough meat on the bone to have good choices. And that's not just because it's a one-page dungeon, because I think each one of us have made one-page dungeons before, and they're better than these. So my point is not to brag about us. My point is to say you can put a decent amount of meat on one page.
Yeah.
I mean, I think maybe there's a certain kind of dungeon master out there who like this is exactly what they need. Maybe like to be generous. Maybe someone's looking for exactly this. Like I just want a series of combats, and I'm willing to pretend that the level appropriateness of the balance is there, and I will bring all of the narrative intention to it, and I will give better plot hooks based on the characters, and I can lift this cleaner out and plop it into my homebrew world because there's so little connective tissue. But that's not me. You could almost like turn to a page in the monster manual and be like, all right, we're doing goblins tonight. Grab a map off of the internet and be like, all right, this is where we're fighting, and you get to the same place.
Yeah. I mean, I I ran Shadow Dark last night, and half of my players couldn't show up, so we did a little side quest for the 2 players that did. And I just pulled out the Shadow Dark random encounters, just the wilderness random encounter page. And I had the 2 players each roll percentile dice 3 times. So I had 2 sets of D100 numbers. And I just took their 2 rolls and made an encounter out of their 2 rolls, right? So they rolled like blood vines and a dire wolf. So I put a dire wolf tangled up in the blood vines, right? And I made 3 encounters out of those 6 rolls. And that was a far more interesting game than I think just about any of these like prefab one-page dungeons. And that was totally created on the fly with my players at the table.
This the player's book does have 34 new feats. It's a lot of feats.
Yeah, I'm interested in kind of perusing those and looking at the subclasses. I know we looked at I think most of these subclasses when they came out in our Unearthed Arcana, but I'm interested in going through these and like looking at the final version, and I'm sure I have thoughts, but I mean, I think subclasses are cool for if you're going to play 5e. Subclasses are cool, and the more subclasses in a lot of ways the better. But but also, if that's your thing, more subclasses is usually a good thing. More feats is a good thing.
It does seem, and this kind of dovetails into the next portion of our conversation too. It seems like we are looking at D&D Beyond first, like software-driven interaction with the game. That feels like it clarifies a lot of the design choices that they are making. As a book, it's like, but it's like, no, you don't understand. This is just a collection of things that are going to be on D&D Beyond now, and it's a question of how the tags interact in the back end with the SQL database. And like, then this is cool because people like feats and character options, and people just want to make characters. And the running of the game, whatever. Leave that to the professionals. Those dummies.
Yeah, I think it was Indestructible that made this point. That it almost seems like the changes made from 5 to 5.5 was to reinforce the need for D&D Beyond, right? If you make a game that's just complicated enough that you need an online character creator, instead of making an actual efficient good game. Like, I'm not saying 5.5 is a bad game. I've on the record saying it's a pretty good game, but it definitely, they could have taken 5e and streamlined it and made it a much tighter game, and instead they broadened it and gave it more fiddly bits and more options. And I think, Taryn's point was that seems to imply that they want the game to require D&D Beyond to play. Like, it's fiddly enough that you have to have the character creator to make a character in a reasonable amount of time.
I have struggled to get players to not use D&D Beyond as much because things get lost. If you're running a character on D&D Beyond, there's tabs and tabs and tabs of stuff, and it takes you 30 seconds to find your save if you're on your skill or whatever, and you're never going deep enough to look at your inventory ever again or the features that you forgot about. How do I find what languages I have? So like I'm all about accessibility, simple, easy, quickly at hand information, and the more you slap onto it, the more bogged down it gets. And I think we're in this weird place, but we're in the beginning of a system, really. As much as this is a continuation of 5e, this is the fewest options we're ever going to have in 5e24, and it's already kind of bending. The support system is groaning under how much decision making and choice points and feats. It's just gonna get more and more heavy and complex and in the way of the fun.
And Mr. Vincent, it's ironic that you say this because this does kind of dovetail into the next topic, and this is one thing that Indestructible Boy talked about in his video, ignoring D&D 2024, which is, I watched this video today and I put in my notes, Indestructible Boy quits D&D again, says this is the last time, breaking news. She keeps saying it, Taryn. One of these days we're going to hold you to it. But he talked about running D&D for kids, and talked about the challenges of trying to make analog characters because he was running for kids at school, and at that school tablets and phones are banned, so it was all analog.
Yeah, and I run games at my wife's school for kids. I've done it for like pretty much all ages, like from lower L to upper L, lower elementary, upper elementary, and middle school, and now high school. So and I agreed with most of what he said about that. I actually picked up the new box set, the Heroes of the Borderlands or whatever it's called. I picked up the new box set specifically to use the character creation system with the control panel style character sheets and and the cards for the species and backgrounds and equipment and all that. And that actually turned out to be a pretty cool way to build a character. The kids definitely liked building a character using those. But by the second session, I was already running into the same problems that Taryn did with the kids wanting to make their own characters and wanting to use D&D Beyond. And it and it's, you have a time crunch when you're running a D&D club. We got 2 hours. And so we made characters during the first session using the templates from the box set, and that was great. But then the second session, they're like, I want to adjust my character. I want to like have a higher charisma or a higher constitution, and I want to change my stats around a little bit. and that starts to eat into your time, limited time. So I had a similar experience as he did. Now, when I've run D&D before, because I'm currently running it for older kids, so I've got like 8th to 10th graders in this club that I'm running right now. When I ran it for elementary school kids, I made my own character sheets, first level character sheets, one for each class. And I specifically tailored each character sheet. So whatever character you were playing, you only needed a D20 and one other dice. So I specifically built the fighter to use a D20 and a D10. The rogue uses a D20 and a D6, right? The sorcerer uses a D20 and a D6. So I picked cantrip spells for the spellcasters. I picked weapons for the martial classes so that it was very efficient and that the kids only needed one other dice other than the D20. And that actually worked really well. The other thing I did was I only had one nice big D20 at the table other than mine. So I had a D20 and I had a big D20, and that big D20 was basically my talking stick. So if it's your turn, you get the D20. And so you're up, you're talking, and when your turn is done, you pass the D20 to the person next to you. And we just use round table initiative, kind of like Shadow Dark, just stayed in initiative order and passed that D20 around for each person's turn. And that turned out to be a very useful hack to control the flow of the game at the table with the younger kids. And I can clean up those character sheets I made for the kids. I'll probably put them on Drive Through RPG or something like that. You'll be able to download it. When I do, I'll post links on this video and in other videos. But yeah, that was what I found to be super useful for running games with kids. But that again limits choice, right? Because as the kids get older, they're online more, right? They're watching TikTok, they're watching Insta Reels. They're like, oh, there's this cool thing you can do with a character build. I want to be able to make my own character so I can have an artificer cleric that does this crazy heal bot thing, or whatever. They see this stuff online, like the optimization stuff they see online, and they want to bring that and customize their character that way. But they're not savvy enough to actually do it on their own. So now it's like a whole side project where they want you to help them build a character sheet that's going to do this thing that they heard about online. And that's both the kind of the beauty and the flaw of Wizards of the Coast D&D ever since 3rd edition, right? Is that character customization has a real appeal to it, but character customization makes the game unnecessarily fiddly and complex.
It does feel, and I say this a lot, like D&D is a bunch of different games held together with bubblegum and duct tape. And one of those games is character creation. Like, character creation is a mini game. And if you don't think so, go onto Reddit and watch people arguing about 17.3 multi-class builds that they are never going to play. Like, they're just tinkering for hours with character, and like, cool, okay, I get it. Like, enjoy that happening at the expense of the rest of the game, right? Feels bad to me. Like those sessions where it's like, all right, I've leveled up, like I've reached a story beat at the table. It's like, all right, you gain a level, and it's like, okay, that's the end of this session then, because now everyone is looking at D&D Beyond for the next hour, picking out spells and whatever, and it's like the game itself grinds to a halt, and everyone's enjoying that separately in their silos. It's almost as if maybe there would be a cool solution of like making that a little more gamified in interactive. And I think maybe Daggerheart achieves this to a degree where it's like, oh, cool, you're bone, I'm also bone. Here are the bone cards. Let's make sure that we like differentiate our abilities.
Mm-hmm.
That adds a little bit. And that's kind of what the starter set has going for it, right? The idea that the starter set is bad because character creation is tough. It's like, no, they solved it. Just very temporarily in a very limited way. And if
Right.
they could apply that going forward to give me the other classes at the least to level 3, we could go a lot further with the kid who's just savvy enough that he knows he wants to play a paladin, but doesn't recognize that it's going to take him 45 minutes to make a paladin because he's not super well versed in the process.
Yeah, and that I actually experienced that just this week at D&D Club, where one of the kids wanted to make their own character. They wanted to play the same character they were already playing, the one they had built with the cards from the box set, but they wanted to make a few changes. And so while we're setting up, she's over there trying to tweak her character sheet. But then the analysis paralysis sets in. It's like, ooh, what's better for my wizard? Is Dex or Con better? Right. And now there's a discussion over, do you want to have a higher armor class or you want to have more hit points? And so we've all been at that point in character creation where you experience a little bit of that, like, ooh, tough choice. But for a kid who doesn't really understand the game fully yet, that analysis, paralysis sets in, and they really want to do this thing, but it's more challenging than they realize, and they kind of bite off more than they can chew. And now they're spending half of the session, so they're spending an hour out of the 2 hours they're playing, because I just keep playing with the other kids, and she's still over there like tinkering with her character sheet. A +1 here, +1 there doesn't really matter. So when I'm like, hey, it's your turn, and she uses a cantrip, no big deal, and she goes back to filling with her character sheet, but it just, to Indestructible Boy's point, it is unnecessarily weighty, and it does create that kind of almost a double bind where the kids I want to play real D&D, right? They've been playing this fast, streamlined design game that, I kind of riffed off of D&D and made a game for them to play when they were elementary school kids. But now as they're older, they're like, Mr. Brad, we want to play real D&D, and I'm like, okay.
The fun part of character creation is when you're done with it. It's finishing the character creation that's really the fun part. It's not while you're in the trenches adding +1s and +2s.
Yeah. Spoken like a writer.
But yeah, the other tips I have for playing games with kids, especially when you first start playing, if you're playing with like elementary age kids, pick your non-gory monsters. Like, funny story, the first time I played with my kids, they were like, what were they, like 12, 9, and 6, right? And after we played, the kids had so much fun, and the next day the grandparents come over, and the 6-year-old is like, Nana, we played D&D, and Big Brother stabbed the witch over and over and over and over again, and the grandmother's looking at me like, what game did you just play with my granddaughter? So from that, I learned the lesson of, instead of having, monsters that bleed or creatures that are gory, when they're with little kids, you want like skeletons, like low level elementals, things that can just turn to dust, like your zombies can turn to dust when they die, right? Instead of having things that bleed, like, human bad guys. And then another one is, kids love animals, right? And that's a great way to make an encounter either combat or non-combat. Is you have a group of, like, a pack of wolves between them and an objective. so that they don't like the objective is not to fight the wolves. The objective is to get to the other side of, the forest, but the wolves are in between them. Kids love animals. Kids really aren't into murdering like animals for the most part. So, but they can choose. They can choose to fight the wolves, or they can choose to feed the wolves, or they can choose to try to talk to the wolves with some sort of magic, right? So animals are a quick and easy hack. Your beast, pull out your beast section of the monster manual. It's a quick, easy hack to turn any encounter into that versatile choice. Is this a combat encounter, or could it be a role play encounter, right? And
That's me.
those
I'm kids.
Mm.
But yeah, so but beyond those simple tips, just good dungeon design, just good game design, like having more than one entrance to a dungeon, right? Meaningful choices. There's the short, hard way. There's the longer, easier way, right? Meaningful choices, and like I said, versatile encounters. Could this encounter be exploration or role play? If they choose this path, it's an exploration encounter where they have to figure out how to get across the river. If they take this path, they meet a ferryman. They can either pay or talk to the ferryman to get them across the river, right? Giving meaningful choices. So,
And I think that's what's missing from a lot of those one-pagers that we were talking about. Like the multiple entrances, multiple routes. That's like the easiest example to see immediately, and is the one that gets like talked about a lot. But like you walk into a room, there's stuff here you can interact with. What are we supposed to do here? Is like the death knell question for me, and I get it from adults. Like children, interestingly, are less likely to ask that until they've been trained to. But the idea of, all right, there's a fountain, there's a chalice. What do you do? What button do I push to advance to the next screen is not the question I want anyone asking, And that
Yeah.
seems to be what a more complex software driven game gets you to, and a very linear combat oriented style gets you to, and all that stuff is there and is okay, but is now taken over, is now like the primary thing, and the creativity goes away. The interesting thing, like what's going to happen here, is the dynamic question that like I keep coming back to find out. Like I don't running the same adventure multiple times and having different outcomes, different stories to tell after the fact, is the best part of being a dungeon master. Not perfectly crafting the linear story that I'm making my friends experience, whether they want to or not. Not the point, not the idea. The idea is like, whoa, I am surprised about what's happening right now because someone had a cool idea interacting with the thing in a way I couldn't have thought of by myself. And that's the good stuff. And it feels like a good adventure cultivates that. A good starter set cultivates that.
Mm-hmm.
And this one does so a little bit by having different types of play available, right? Like it's broken up into 3. And the keep is a little cozy cottage core, which Taryn was like, "Well, this is not the D&D I want to play," and like, it's not the D&D I want to play either. But it's there for Brad running 5th graders. Like, maybe they want to catch goats and not slaughter them, or maybe they want, as Glenn is saying, to go see what the price is for goat meat on the black market and run with that. Hey, free goats.
Yeah. So what was your take on Taryn's accusation that the adventures in the box set are a little cozy core?
I mean, I think it's accurate, and I think it's the first thing you come against, and it's very easy to forget to let go of all your experience / baggage when approaching a product like this. This is supposed to be someone's first introduction to D&D. or an experienced person getting it to bring new people in, and those new people oftentimes are going to be kids. Not necessarily, right? I was in my 30s when I started playing D&D, but like potentially, maybe these are kids coming to the hobby. And in a lot of ways, those first like fetch quest things that I would skip, I would be like looking at my dungeon master sideways if they wanted me to like run around town finding goats. Like this is not my idea of a fun time. Like it's the training mission. It's a tutorial. It's to figure out how to roll die and add a number to it and figure out if it beats the DC. And it's something that you can elide over very quickly if you have experienced players. And it presents this like opportunity to find out what kind of game you like in the first place, right? There's someone at your table who's going to light up because they want to play Farm Simulator, right? You don't want to run Farm Simulator. Cool, that's a conversation to have, maybe outside of the game. But the idea that D&D can contain multitudes, here's a little smattering of like, this is what town is like. Yeah, you don't like it, it's boring. Yeah, the point of the game is to leave here now and go to the Caves of Chaos, where there are like this is some intense stuff going on. It is a first level adventure, second level adventure where characters can get smoked. Like you can get crit and die from a goblin arrow. There is spoilers, but there is an ogre who could pretty much one shot most of the characters for most of the levels, who is for hire, but he refuses to go over there because in this place his brother died, and he refuses to go over there because that's where his dead brother has been resurrected and is now guarding the door, and he can't deal with that. So like, I don't know, that's a little heavy. That doesn't feel super like cozy to me. The ogre zombie family trauma cycle. So yeah, there's a little bit of everything in this starter set, and I think it's to give new people an opportunity to see. All right, D&D can contain this cozy game if you wanted to, or it can be wilderness exploration. Not really, unless you augment it, which is kind of my whole thing. But hey, or it can be like dungeon crawly. Go fight monsters, and hey, it turns out most of the buttons you have on this screen are do damage to monster, so that's what you're going to lean into.
Yeah, I haven't, like I said, I just picked up the box set a couple of weeks ago, mainly to use the maps and the character sheet, character card creation system for D&D Club. I haven't actually run the adventures in the box set yet, but I still think the D&D box sets are the best products. Like I really like every one of the box sets. I've run adventures from each of them, and overall, I think the box sets are the best Wizards of the Coast content. But again, I like low level play. I'm not into like running, like optimized characters who are like 16 levels of this and 2 levels of that and 2 more levels of something else. That's not my style of play. I keep my games usually between 1st and 8th level or 1st and 12th level. So yeah, I like the box sets, and I think this box set is good, and that's why I really wanted to like the new Faerun book, the new Forgotten Realms book, when the news came out that there was going to be a bunch of one-page dungeons in it and a short adventure. I was like, that could be really cool. But like I said earlier, I was kind of disappointed in the delivery on those.
And I think it's the lack of that one extra element. Like in the box set, the starter set, the complaint can be that they didn't connect it enough, which Mr. Welch is talking about in chat right now. Of like, there's not that the keep and the caves are very separate on purpose because they made it theoretically possible to have different DMs running it. And there's a cost to that, but I love the idea of the first introduction to D&D. It's like, cool, play D&D. Next week, run D&D. Oh God, I love that. There is an opportunity cost there where you can't really contain spoilers one in the next, and yet still, there's like this birthday cake is one thing. There's a couple moments. There's like someone's niece somewhere else, and you can find out. There's the the big bad had a relationship in town. There's someone in the wilderness who could kind of put those dots together if you talk to them. So there's like elements there that make it more than just, hey, walk in the store, fight these guys, fight those guys, fight these guys. Like the first room with kobolds, you could get through that whole thing without fighting anything. The centipedes, if you walk into that space, you're gonna fight. But like there are kobolds here, you can reason with them because they speak language, and they have a problem that you could solve for them if you're savvy. And you could do that in different ways, and you could deceive them, you could befriend them, or yeah, you could slaughter them all. That's there, and that's fun sometimes, and that's D&D, and that's kind of like the lowest hanging fruit. So when the dungeon is designed to do that, primarily, it feels like you missed a trick.
Yeah, and I think that is kind of the core issue with dungeon design, adventure design in D&D. I think from the beginning is that the adventures are designed with combat in mind, and I think you should instead design your adventure with exploration and role play in mind, because players can take any encounter and turn it into a combat encounter, right? Everything in the game has a stat block. It's really easy to default an encounter to combat. So if you design it, if you do your dungeon design, like 70% combat, 10% exploration, 20% role play, right? Then like it's going to feel like it's 100% combat, because players are going to turn some of those non-combat encounters into combat encounters. Where if you just design the whole thing to be 40% exploration, 60% role play, then the players, but still have the potential for the players to turn any of those into combat, you're going to have a much more balance. You're going to probably end up with like 30, 30, 30, or, 25, 25, 50, with 50 being the combat.
And it's always easier to drop combat into another situation.
Mm-hmm.
If you have then the other way around, if you have a combat focused session or a combat focused campaign, it's harder to drop roleplay into it, or it's nearly impossible to drop exploration in.
Right.
But if you have exploration and RP focused adventure, you can drop combat in anywhere. It's very easy, just in the next room there's some monsters, go.
Yeah, so exactly, Jim. If you design your adventure to be mostly exploration and mostly role play, and then have like a random encounter table for combat, or have your NPCs have bodyguards or vicious animal pets, right? Then there's an obvious way to derail any encounter into combat. So I think it's a matter of like just approaching the design with exploration and role play first.
And it might be baked into the core of it all, though, of the inflation of the character ability and resource. Like, you've got a system where the first fight never matters. You need to hit him twice to get him worn down enough, like by the book, to get the third fight to actually be interesting. So not only is it combat forward, it is also combat irrelevant. We're doing one fight in the dungeon, they can just go supernova. So now I have to put in a couple other fights before the big fight to get them softened up a little bit, to do a little resource depletion. And in a dungeon crawl that goes a lot faster through combat, that can have a lot more space between the fights, that's one thing. But when combat takes an hour and I need to get 3 fights into my 3.5 hour session, I guess we're just doing, we're fight to get this to the appropriate challenge level. And that's why I stopped writing for DM's Guild.
Yeah.
Phil is a good question here.
Yeah, that's a great question. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, the question's there.
All right.
I'm hosting. I'm sorry. Would you all say blending exploration and roleplay into a one-page adventure is a more advanced dungeon master skill since there's no room for a lot of details? Yes, absolutely. I try really hard, and I think it's from my like English major, whatever poetry background. Like the economy of language. When I see like Dolmenwood is an incredible example of this. When I see a sentence that expands in my mind like those little pills that turned into spongy dinosaurs when I was a child, that's what I'm looking for always. That's what I'm trying to make always. The idea that this character is weird and interesting and wants something, and that is a tiny little machine that's going to propel itself into story, or whatever. This chair is leaning back against the wall, and if it tips over, it's going over the cliff. Something's going to happen there without me finishing the rest of the thought. That is, maybe it's not dungeon mastering, maybe it's the next step of like adventure creation, adventure design, which I guess is really at the core of dungeon mastering too. But those things light me up much more, and I find light me up to make much more than like, how are we going to spice up this fight? And like ultimately, usually the answer is one of these. It's environmental or it's social. You change the stakes, you change the objective.
Yeah, I think good writing helps. Like if you can be succinct, and you can't like explain a whole like role play encounter with like multiple incentives and multiple motives, but in a one page you can, if you pick out like I'm trying to find it there. I have an example. It's a one page one shot I did, uh, um, where there's 3 NPCs in the dungeon, and each one has a motive. So at the beginning, or like at the top of the page, there's a block of like, it's basically 3 sentences. There's 1 sentence for each NPC that gives their motive, right? And then in their little description, whichever room they're actually in their description, I give them an additional comment of how they're going to approach combat, right? So this NPC is going to try to, lure the players towards the shambling mound. This NPC is going to try to maneuver around the players to use their methods as best they can in combat. This NPC is going to fall back and hide behind all the myconids, right? So it's it's 1 sentence description at the beginning. What's their motive? 1 sentence description in their room entry. Kind of what's their tactic, right? So in 2 sentences, I've for each NPC, so total of 6 sentences, I made the dungeon as dynamic as I could for a 1-page dungeon. So, but it's like it's an economy of words. Like you have to be succinct and give some sort of something juicy about your NPC or about your monster in like 1 or 2 sentences.
Yeah, word economy is pretty important, but when running it, you don't really need as much as you'd think to run lush roleplay. Might get caught up on backstory, on deep-seated trauma, and none of that stuff really matters. All that really matters for an NPC, if you're really tight on word space, is what they want. Maybe they have a secret, maybe something they like and something they don't like. Wants to recover the family's lost sword, likes nature, hates industry. Boom, you can have a whole roleplay encounter just from that.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the character is that you're running, just insert at the end like, would prefer not to die at the hands of these jabronis, and like usually that'll help you run them better. That doesn't seem to be a consideration in a lot of the design. Hey guys, we're cooking through time, and I'm in charge, and I forgot about that. And there's an actual play coming up very soon that was dope. I am actually very excited for this one because we had a great time, and it's been long enough that like I'm gonna watch it with fresh eyes. So make sure you are subscribed to Landlocked Warlocks and you watch that now or in the future. If it is already in the future when you're hearing me say these words, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Is there a way for me to drop a link in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to figure out. Like, I was going to try to drop the PDF of that one-page one-shot that I was just talking about. I found it in my myriad of files.
Mucho gusto, Joaquin.
So,
if it exists on the internet already, you can't put a PDF into the chat.
right?
But you can.
Yeah. I know it's
hyperlink.
Yeah, it's out there somewhere. I'll see if I can find the hyperlink for it.
Hey everybody, Google exists. Brad, you want to talk? You want to talk about these sweet threads that you added to the agenda today?
Yeah, crazy thing. I've been helping my wife assemble a new wardrobe. My algorithm is feeding me a lot of women's clothing right now because I've been buying a lot of stuff for my wife. And this cool link to D&D clothes came up. Like, we've talked before about D&D is under monetized, and people fear that that means that D&D, like Wizards of the Coast, is going to microtransaction the game to death. But this is a cool way to make D&D not so under monetized by licensing D&D logos and D&D monsters to clothing designers. There's some cool stuff in here. There's like a gelatinous, if you scroll up a little bit, Ryan, there's a gelatinous cube shirt. I think it's that green shirt on the right. Go back down a little bit. It looks like a skeleton's dissolving inside a gelatinous cube on this one particular shirt. If you zoom in on some of these dresses, there's like D20 logos and stuff. But yeah, it's kind of a clever take. Like, you give a bunch of like art assets from D&D to clothing designers and let them see what they come up with. I thought it was a cool way for Wizards of the Coast to make money without microtransactioning players and DMs to death. And it's a cool way to reach out to your female fan base. I just thought this was neat.
So if you have a goth girlfriend, you know what you're getting her for Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife, I don't know, came to the conclusion recently that she needed to update her wardrobe, and she already has a lot of black in her wardrobe, and she likes witchy stuff, and she plays role-playing games. So she's like, why don't I have a goth wardrobe? I'm like, I can help you with that.
And this just goes to show you the power of the algorithm. I know a lot of us are creatures of YouTube and understand these things already, but like, they know what the person's phone next to you is looking at. They know what you're talking about. They know what you're thinking about and what you're dreaming at night. And it is the Lady of Pain.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's pretty dope, actually.
That's cool. I like this one.
Yeah. Lady of Pain on a mini dress. Yeah. Hell yeah.
Sick. Maybe I'm updating my wardrobe next. Let's go.
I bet you could turn that into a t-shirt, Ryan. Just cut the bottom off.
I am heavier than I used to be. It does take more fabric these days. Hey man, it's 2024, 2025. What year is it? I can wear whatever I want. It just turns out that that's a t-shirt and pants, but it's not because I'm conforming to any norms. It's just, well, I'm comfortable. And I also don't think I could pull off a mini dress. But hey, I'm going back to the gym soon. Gender equality in D&D. That's a whole. That's another 90 minutes conversation.
Oh yeah. But I think what do we got for our roundtable discussion? It kind of goes right along with the things we've been talking about, right?
Well, we discussed a few things, but I think you're talking about just like the encounter, the random encounter generator sort of spiel. Or
the
tone,
the setting the tone, right? I feel like that dovetails nicely into, like, we've been talking about dungeon design and critiquing Wizards of the Coast dungeon design. The idea of this, like, how do you use your encounter design to set a tone, and what kind of tone do you want to set with D&D? Like, Indestructible Boy was criticizing Wizards of the Coast's cozy core design, as he calls it, kind of putting in these like goat chasing encounters and like, low stakes encounters into the new box set. What do you do if you want a cozy core style game? How do you set that tone? Or if you want like a dark, sinister, more that grim dark tone, how do you set that tone? What do you guys do as DMs to kind of set a tone?
I think that the primary way, the best way, before you're even talking about word choice or aesthetic, is buy-in. This is session 0, everybody getting on the same page. In my experience, there's a lot of stuff you get for free, and we're making jokes. It's happening. 5, 6 friends sitting around, hopped up on sugar and/or alcohol. Someone's cracking a joke at some point, especially if you are doing a good job raising the stakes, creating dramatic tension, like just to blow off steam as a survival mechanism. At least the people I hang out with are going to make a joke.
The comic relief comes free.
The comic relief comes free. So I'm always suspicious of the real zany gonzo stuff. Like, you get there automatically, I think. That's someone's preferred method of play. And we want to know that immediately. I want to discuss with the players. In fact, for our mini Daggerheart campaign, we should have recorded this because it was one of the cleanest ways I've seen it go down. Jim was like, all right, 1 to 5. We don't even have to talk about it. Like, I'm just going to write down, we're just take a quick poll. Like, cozy was one of the questions. Like, what kind of tone are we all going for? We don't all have to agree because this game contains multitudes. However, the understanding of what you're looking for is going to help me deliver it and not get frustrated that you're stepping on my high dramatic moment with your comedy, or you want to go chase goats and like, God, I didn't make a goat chasing adventure. Like, what the fuck? What are we gonna? I can't do this for 4 hours and have a good time. So I think that's, again, that's so primary. That's 0. I don't even think that's 1. I think that's 0.
Yeah, 100%. Ryan's right. It starts with the buy-in, and then I think when you're actually running a session, I think that the tone follows the tropes, and like a novel is in a genre if it has enough of a genre's tropes in it. But if you mix in other tropes, it becomes a different genre. If you have tropes like a missing jewels and crime, and you have all these mystery tropes like bumbling police and that, but then you add in the trope of aliens, it's not a regular mystery anymore. Now it has aliens in it. So the tone follows the tropes. And like, if you want to have a spooky setting, a spooky session, just make it rain. It's rainy and dark and cold. It's that simple. It's like just the stuff that they do in the horror movies to make things scary. Do all that, wolves howling in the distance. The moon is full. There's fog out. You dump in tropes like you're adding salt to a dish, and you dump in the right amount and enough tropes, and it's very clear what tone, what genre you're in.
Yeah, I agree with the buy-in thing. 2 examples of like getting players to buy in to the setting, to the tone. There's one time I was doing kind of a sci-fi horror thing. We were running D&D, but it was the players were on a Lithid ship, right? So the mind flayers were gone. The ship was crashed. The mind flayers were gone, but all the like weird science that was left behind by the Lithids had come to life in its own way. So it's like this creepy spaceship kind of vibe. And I just told them up front, we're going for survival horror here. So I'm going to give you advantage whenever you role play being legitimately afraid. If you're role playing being afraid in a situation that would warrant your character being afraid, I'm going to give you advantage. And that's all I did. It was like those 2 sentences. And that was enough for the players to buy in and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to get advantage. Because I also, and I also told them, because we're going survival horror, things are going to be tough. So you're going to want to get that advantage as often as possible. Right. And that cut down on the jokes and the goofiness, because now the players are bought in to role playing being scared in order to get that advantage on their next roll. Right. The other one was a short campaign, and players started talking about Dark Souls. And I said, if you guys want to run a grimdark game, I would be more than happy to run a grimdark game. Like, that'd be so cool. Yeah, grimdark, make it super challenging, super hard. And you know what happened? They role played like 10 out of 12 encounters for the first 3 weeks because they were scared to die. So they role played their way and stealthed their way through as much as they could, because they didn't want to get into combat, because we declared from the beginning, this is going to be tough. This is going to Dark Souls style grimdark. And it doesn't take much to get the players buy-in, as long as they're, they all want to do it.
Yeah, and to Jim's point, getting everybody on the same page and then giving them the tools to be on that page and reminding them they're on the page, because we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, right? Like, we're all very comfortable grabbing from this bag of horror tropes, because we're not trying to figure out how to yes and aliens. Like, I think a lot of new DMs are trying to make something new and exciting, and that's hard to do by yourself and almost impossible to do well improvisationally with a bunch of other people at the same time. So staying in the lane that you have established does a lot.
Yeah, and my 22-year-old daughter says, Dad, I miss playing D&D. I want to start playing again. Like, can we put together a group? And I'm like, of course. So I started throwing out ideas, because we're putting together this group. It's going to be mostly women. And I was like, so what kind of stuff do you want to play? And the topic of mystery comes up, and my daughter's like, oh, mystery in D&D, that would be really cool. And so again, getting that buy-in, like, I would love to. I've tried to run mystery games multiple times, and my murder hobo male players just don't really buy in. But like, I'm now excited to get this game started with a bunch of women players who are bought into the idea of doing a murder mystery in D&D. Like, that's really cool. So I agree that getting buy-in is one of the best ways to set tone. And then to Phil's point, talking about cozy core, right? He says it's much easier to turn cozy into dark instead of the other way around. I did an adventure one time where it was a super cozy town, and there was a bunch of like halflings and humans all living together in this little cozy community. And it was kind of like, I originally set it up as kind of this safe haven between dungeons, right? And turns out most of the people in this village were vegetarians, and this mushroom stew was their main dish that these people ate on almost a daily basis. At least one meal a day, they had this mushroom stew, and it was delicious. And everybody raved about the mushroom stew in this town. And then, plot twist, the players, something goes wrong. The players investigate. There's a witch living in town, and she has a bunch of myconid children in cages, and she's sloughing off like chunks of these myconid children to make the ingredients for this mushroom stew that everybody loves. So that was a way to take a very cozy situation and turn it dark and twist it. So you can, like Jim was saying, you can play with tropes, right? And if you throw in a dark twist into your cozy core trope, you can actually create a pretty interesting and exciting moment for your players to be like, oh shit, we've been eating myconid kids.
There's definitely something about that contrast that is great. Like you have the players rescue a goat in the first 20 minutes of the adventure so that when you kill that goat in 4 weeks, oh my god, they've never cared about anything more in their life. Jim, what are you cooking up, man? I saw he went to the bookshelf. That always grabs my
I went to
attention,
go
doesn't
grab Dragon Delves because just as Phil said, it's easier to turn cozy into horror, and it just made me think of this adventure in Dragon Delves. Baker's doesn't, because it's just looking for the background. A small cozy stop along a well-traveled road. The village is home to friendly folk who enjoy bread and pastries prepared by Phil Flower Forge. Unbeknownst to these townsfolk, Phil uses dragon fire to bake his goods. When the unruly gold dragon wormling that Phil is raising goes missing, the same day as blah blah blah, the characters become embroiled in a fairy tale plot. And so that sounds very cozy and cute, right? Until you get to a little bit of a spoiler, but until you get to where you find out the wormling has been kidnapped by a hag, and an NPC you thought was on your side made a pretty horrific deal with that hag a few years before, and the adventure turns when you discover that. So that's perfect example of exactly what they were talking about.
Yeah.
and I think it's worth addressing Pink and Black here. Doesn't that violate your premise? Like, doesn't that make the story uncozy? Yes, absolutely. Again, zero buy-in. If you have agreed, perhaps with your small children, that things are going to be cozy, then yeah, don't slaughter the goat for the cult ritual.
Don't reveal that the girl sold her brother to the hag in exchange for candy or something. Leave that part out.
Yeah.
Again, go watch a Disney movie and then go read the folklore that it's based on. If you were looking at cool ways to do that head fake.
Well, and the other thing too is you can, if you have you're always going to have multiple players at the table, and if those players have a different preference, like one wants cozy, one wants dark, yes, you can blend them together. But you also, if one person really wants a particular style of game, you can also keep them very separate, right? So one way to do that was with a points of light style campaign, right? Where you lay out a map, or you explain to the players, these towns or this city is the safe zone. This is where you're going to role play. This is where you have to go back here to level up. And you can, so if you got somebody at your table that really wants cozy, or really wants emotional driven, dramatic role play, then incentivize them to go back to the city. You have to go back to the city to level up, or you have to level up in one of the towns. And then you put that cozy stuff, or the drama, family role play. Here's where you can explore your backstory and tell your, emotional, your emotional family drama. You can do all of that in town. Then outside of town, for all of the rest of the murder hobo players at your table, fair game. This is where everything's dangerous. You're free to murder stuff without consequences. And you can, so you can set the tone in multiple ways, especially if you're running a sandbox. This section of the sandbox is cozy. The rest of the sandbox is dangerous, right? That way you can tailor your game to multiple different styles of play.
Yeah, there's a reason the townsfolk are not going into the mythic underworld. It's bad down there. It's dangerous. And
Right.
then within the game, the players are making the choice to turn on or off the cozy town switch, or the let it rain blood switch.
Yeah, the members of this town never cross the river. They'll go to the river to get water, but they never go to the other side of the river. And that's a way to broadcast that things are dangerous over there, things are safe over here, right? And that allows you to have multiple tones within one game setting.
I am looking forward to future updates on your mystery campaign. And just as a caveat, as someone who has run a woman majority table in the past, the assumption that they're not also going to be murder hobos is false, right? Like if they're going into it, cool, but like, whoo, I pulled out the X card. I was like we can get dark and weird, but like not that dark and weird. So don't assume you know what's coming. But
Oh,
I am curious how you navigate a mystery in D&D because it is a challenge.
yeah. Well, and to your point though, my wife can be a terrible murder hobo. Yeah, and she's a theater kid. I totally expected her to come to the table and be ready to role play, right? And we have played other games. Like we're both playing in a Vampire the Masquerade game, and she's loving the role play. But when she gets to D&D, she becomes a murder hobo.
I mean, that's me. I am a theater kid and I am murder hobo. I am both. I am full theater kid, full min-maxer. I'm everything. Yeah, I contain multitudes.
That's great.
That's what's great about this game. I think that's why D&D is still the 50,000-pound gorilla in the room. I think that's why the starter set has something for everybody, which means it has something for everyone to be like, not in my D&D. Like, this is not my preferred method of play. It's like, okay, cool, yeah, because there's 7 other game modes available right now too. Just like don't push that button. And I think to guys like us who maybe have varied interests, who love that grimdark shit and would get bored of it if we did it every week for a month, like that's why we keep coming back to D&D. That's why, whatever, we can talk about what's wrong with it for an hour. And this isn't a video about quitting. This is just us figuring out how to make it slightly better so we can keep doing it as hard as we can.
Right. And I think that's the beauty of TTRPGs, right? Is the customization and the homebrew ability, right? I think that's what really made the community thrive, right? Like go all the way back to like early conventions, like before the internet, people would show up at cons with their zines. This is my homebrew zine. This is how I play D&D, right? And that was an introduction to this whole world that we've now grown TTRPGs into, of like, how do I homebrew this? How do I change it? How do I make my own content? How do I make my own world? Right? That's what a lot of young DMs want to do. I want to have my own continent. I want to have my own, campaign setting, right? And that's the beauty of the hobby, right? Is making it your own.
If you want to watch us play a game that isn't D&D and have a blast doing it, get that crunchy min-maxy stuff off the table so that the real weird beating heart of the thing can come through, shining through. Stay tuned. We are minutes away from the premiere of the Temple of the Moon Priests, which is it's free, right? It's freely available on the internet. Like the adventure itself is just like out there in the world.
Yeah, Temple of the Moon Priests. It's a free download. It's a little more than a one-page adventure. I think that, there's additional pages you can download if you want to flesh it out a little bit. But yeah, it's an old school dungeon crawl. I'm pretty sure the original version is system agnostic. We of course used our own UDare system. So if you want to rush over to Drive Through RPG before we launch the actual play, you can download the UDare system and see the rules. That is a one-page rule set. So we're basically playing a very rules-light game with a system-agnostic dungeon, and the hilarity ensues because the rules get out of the way and the role play comes out.
And it's not too long either. It's about 2:20, 2:15. It's pretty tight runtime.
Half a CR.
You can do that. You can do 2 hours and 15 minutes. Come on. And about 15 minutes from now, that's going to be starting. And we're going to be in the chat. You can chat with us while you're watching it.
All right. Any party words before I push this button? Everyone have a good
Oh.
weekend.
Oh, we're done. No.
Well, Jim,
everybody.
I know you're under the weather. I hope
Yeah.
you feel better soon. I hope I didn't talk too much, but I was trying to save your voice.
My parting word is pink and black. I dare you to watch our actual play because I think you'll like it. I dare you to watch it. I dare you.
Snap.
Dare you.
We're not like the other actual plays. Guys, always a pleasure. Everyone in chat, thank you. Even if we're not engaging all the time because we're trying to, I don't know, run this show. We're reading it and enjoying all of your words. It is always nice just to hang out and talk some tater pigs on a Friday, casually, with all y'all. And I'll take your 15 minutes. Thank you. Bye, everybody.